Hi guys, this is Omer from MMOs.com with another quick weekly news recap of all major MMO news and announcements for the week ending April 10th, 2017. This is episode number 90 of the recap, and the first bit of news this week comes from Kakao Games and is about Black Desert Online. The news is that the game is getting a brand new class on April 20th, which is the Striker class, which is a melee fist weapon user. Other updates happening to BDO include the Kingslayer update is set to be delivered in 2 parts instead of 3, a new militia defense system, wall climbing mechanics, and much more. So big news for BDO on the horizon. Also, actually, the Dark Knight class is set to awaken on April 12th, and the long-awaited Kemslivia update is set to launch sometime in May. So there's a ton of updates on the horizon for BDO. And the last bit of BDO news revolves around a bit of a business side, because BDO South America is launching through Red Fox Games as a buy-to-play title. In fact, every version of BDO since North America has been buy-to-play, so perhaps a free-to-play version is still far off, because even the South American version is going to be buy-to-play. But honestly, if you haven't bought BDO yet, it's worth the $5 when it goes on sale, or even $10. The game is definitely well worth checking out. Next up, the Record of Lodoss War Online officially launched this last week in open beta. The game's official website has been hella laggy and the servers are actually quite unstable, but perhaps that's actually the sign of a good launch, as enough players were interested in checking the game out to the point where the servers were incredibly laggy. In its core though, Record of Lodoss War Online is an old school MMORPG reminiscent of games like Redstone and The Legend of Mir. So if you like those old school MMORPGs, perhaps give Lodoss War Online a try. There's a first look on MMOs.com already. And speaking of old school MMORPGs, we have a bit of industry news from Jagex, makers of RuneScape. Jagex's 2016 revenues are up 28% from last year, up to £74.4 million, which is about $92 million. And with the past year marking RuneScape's 15th year of operation, RuneScape hit a big milestone last year as well, with hitting about 250 million registered users, and that's quite impressive. Given the game's success, the Chinese owners, Zhongli Holdings, seem to be quite pleased with their purchase of Jagex back in 2016. Given the strength of RuneScape, I suspect it's going to be huge for the years to come. The game shows no signs of slowing down. Also in industry news, this last week, South Korean MMORPG studio WeMade Entertainment, best known for creating The Legend of Mir, invested in XL Games and Hound 13. XL Games is the company best known for making ArcheAge, and Hound 13 works on a game called The 100th Soul, which is a mobile title. WeMade also made smaller investments in Destiny Child's developer Nextfloor, Pulsar Creative, and a company called Luthiel. The cool bit of news here is that they actually invested in the company to make ArcheAge. I'm curious if it's going to change anything for ArcheAge or not, but I guess WeMade is diversifying their games. There should be no changes to day-to-day in any of their games they invested in. It's just a financial thing. And shifting gears a bit, Ship of Heroes withdraws from Kickstarter after failing to drum up interest in their first week. We actually talked quite a bit about this one on the podcast. Ship of Heroes is a City of Heroes inspired game, and we talked a lot about it in the last podcast. They just couldn't drum up interest for their game. They only got $35,000 of their $400,000 goal in the first week, and they said they pulled it because they were unable to gather enough interest, and they gotta do more work before they reach out for another Kickstarter, which I definitely agree with. And as much as I'd like to see a City of Heroes remake / spiritual successor, I don't think Kickstarter funded games will ever be able to accomplish that. Remember, Ship of Heroes is one of 4 different spiritual successors of City of Heroes in the works. Perhaps the others will have more luck. The team behind this one still expects to release some kind of alpha by the end of 2018, which sounds ambitious, but we'll see if that actually happens. And speaking of upcoming ambitious MMORPGs, Age of Wushu 2's pre-registration officially begins. Still no word on a release date, but hey, at least we get pre-register for it. Age of Wushu 2 aims to differentiate itself from other MMORPGs by focusing on sandbox elements with non-targeted action combat. The game is also expected to play a bit like survival games, so players will be able to actually build houses, create tools, and whatnot. Pre-registrations are only open to those in China though, but at least this shows they're making some kind of progress. I'm still actually waiting for Dark and Light, and actually this game actually sounds a lot like Dark and Light, in that it has these MMORPG elements with survival elements. Dark and Light I still believe is set to release sometime in the summer of this year, but we'll have to wait for that one. And the video you're seeing in the background is the official trailer for Age of Wushu 2, however it shows basically nothing. Next up, in some more positive and immediate news, Master X Master's closed beta has officially begun and is set to run until April 27th. Founders Packs are also available for sale with exclusive in-game skins, titles, and other goodies. And as with most closed betas, there will be a wipe, but the game is expected to launch for realsies sometime this summer. Expect an updated second look for this one, as apparently a lot has changed since Master X Master's first round of alpha testing. I do think the core element of Master X Master, namely the fact that you can swap heroes mid-combat, was really cool, so I'm curious to see how it's going to do. And up next, in some not so positive news, Cosmic League is set to shut down on April 12th with a mobile RPG version of the game called CosmicBreak Adventures replacing it. Apparently it takes more than scantily clad anime waifus to be successful in the West, as Cyberstep quickly discovered. We actually played this one during Sunday Fun Day, and it was definitely an oddball. It definitely felt a bit odd. The Western closure doesn't seem to be affecting the Japanese version though, which will remain open, so fans of the game can still play on that server, although with some extra latency. Next up, an RPG Maker MMORPG is actually happening. Wings of Misadventure is trying to make it through the gauntlet that is streamed Greenlight. Oftentimes, people have asked whether some of the games I did videos for were actually made in RPG Maker, but as far as I know, not a single game we covered on MMOs.com was actually made in RPG Maker until now. There's actually a handful of MMORPG engines that use primarily 2D pixel art, but none have actually been RPG Maker games. Also, the video seeing in the background shows some actual gameplay for Wings of Misadventure, which is more than what we can say for a lot of ambitious Kickstarter games. So at least there's some actual gameplay, and it looks like there's something here, although it looks quite basic. I do think indie MMORPGs can actually deliver something cool. Just look at Lifeforge. As long as you're not trying to promise the world, you can at least deliver something. It could do pretty well. I just thought this one was nifty because it's actually made on RPG Maker, and we'll see how far it gets though. No release date just yet. Moving right along, on the more established MMORPG front, Neverwinter's Shroud of Souls update is set to go live on May 2nd, which is set in the River District in the game, and it'll come with the long-awaited loadouts feature, which is exactly what it sounds like. It allows players to customize their builds, including gear, and quickly swap them out during gameplay, like loadouts in shooters. Several new strongholds, a new dynamic siege, customizable guild halls, and much more are set to go live with the update on May 2nd. And as for the PC version of the game, no word on when a console release will happen, probably sometime shortly afterwards. Up next, Dauntless, the free-to-play upcoming Monster Hunter-esque action RPG, is now selling Founders Packs, which are now priced between $40 up to $80. The lowest tier grants access to closed beta, which will begin sometime this summer, whereas the higher tier will give players access to a special Founders Beta, which is set to begin sometime before the summer closed beta, so you get access a little bit beforehand. There's a lot of hype behind this one. I'm actually looking forward to checking it out myself. It'll be free to play, so no need to spend anything, but if you want guaranteed access to beta, you will need to pony up for a Founders Pack. And move right along, all good things must come to an end. The esports scene for Guild Wars 2 seems to be coming to an end as ESL announced that their Guild Wars 2 section will be shutting down. The last two Guild Wars 2 Cups will still proceed as planned. Remember, this is just ESL closing their doors to esports events for the game. NCSoft/Arena can still do their own stuff if they want, but cultivating an esports scene for an MMORPG seems difficult. Off the top of my head, the only game that actually pulls this off quite well is World of Warcraft, and that's the only MMORPG I can think of off the top of my head with a decent competitive scene. I thought Blade & Soul would do better, but it just doesn't have a giant scene either. But I guess for now, rest in pepperoni, Guild Wars 2 esports. Now next up, IMC Games will be releasing another major update to Trio Saviors soon, which will be making major tweaks to the game's combat system. Namely, a new formula will be used for damage calculation, some stats will be streamlined, and solo fields will see adjustments in difficulty to make them quote-unquote less demanding for solo characters near the recommended level, so it's going to make grinding solo a bit easier. IMC Games has been introducing quite a few updates to the game over the last few weeks, and despite an iffy launch, the game is still quite popular, averaging about 3,000 or so users at any given time on Steam alone, which is still quite good. And even if you never played this one, go check out the game's soundtrack, it's top-notch. Next up, a small bit of news from Wargaming, the company that makes World of Tanks. The company's head of global competitive gaming, Mohammed Fadl, said, "You are stupid to say betting is bad. It's a natural part of sports," which is interesting because a lot of game companies have kind of stayed away from betting. I mean, Psyonix, the guys that make Rocket League, have been trying to crack down on online gambling on their platforms and whatnot, but it looks like Wargaming is all about that online gambling. They're A-okay with it, and it's pretty cool. They just outright call anyone stupid to start making, anti-betting comments. So they're clearly not offended about people betting on their games. Up next, a bit of mobile news. Square Enix dropped off the first gameplay trailer for their mobile RPG SINoALICE, which is the next project from the creative director Yoko Taro, the guy best known for releasing Nier Automata. And while the art style looks really cool, I don't know if the game is going to be too different from other mobile titles, but I guess we'll have to wait to check it out ourselves. No word on a release date for this one just yet, at least in the West. It is planned for a Japanese release sometime in the spring. Move right along. Diablo 3's Necromancer is right around the corner, according to a blog post from Blizzard. The Necromancer class was announced, I believe, back in BlizzCon, so it's been quite a while since we've actually seen the Necromancer, but apparently it should be releasing somewhat soon. But it is a bit disappointing to see it took this long from the announcement to an actual release for a new class. It wasn't a major expansion either, it was just that new class, but it looks like it's going to happen eventually, though. Do keep in mind, though, the Necromancer class is not free. It'll be paid DLC, so you have to pay for this new character class. And moving right along, we have Shardbound, which entered into early access this last week. It's a free-to-play 1v1 CCG/turn-based tactical strategy game hybrid. It's trying to capitalize on the success of games like Shadowverse as well as Hearthstone, and it looks quite similar to games like Duelist in that you can kind of move figurines around on a board. As is, the game lacks single-player content, but honestly, who plays these games for single-player content anyway? Expect the first look for this one relatively soon. curious to see if it's going to be able to make a name for itself in a now crowded market. And moving right along, SaverOnline arrived on Steam this last week as well. Yes, the game actually used to be called Ghost Online, and I believe launched back in 2007 or 2006, and it's very much a MapleStory clone, as you can clearly see from the visuals in the game. It's actually not the best MapleStory clone either. I actually personally liked Wonder King and Lawtail a bit more. Lawtail probably being the best MapleStory-esque style game, but regardless, this old game is now available on Steam for free. It's showing a long list of older games relaunching on Steam to try to capture some of that old glory. Moving right along, DropZone, the 3v3 MOBA, is set to go free to play on April 12th. Whereas Master x Master is a distinct MOBA/MMORPG hybrid, DropZone is a more traditional MOBA. The game did launch as a buy to play title, and it looks like it didn't do too well on Steam. And I do think going free to play was the right move. The game got pretty good reviews overall, but without a large enough player base, MOBAs really cannot survive. And given that the biggest MOBAs, League, Dota, Smite, and whatnot, are all free to play, it's going to be hard to justify a purchase price for this title. Expect the first look for this one when it goes free to play sometime next week. Moving right along, it would not be a weekly news recap without mentioning Revelation Online. I believe we mentioned last week that the Stardust update for the game was set to launch soon, but we didn't know quite how soon until now. That soon is now on April 12th, which is when the Stardust update will go live, and with it, that brand new map that supports up to 400 players at once, which can be quite chaotic. And with the update comes Star Shadow Island, where players and guilds will fight for control over 4 resource nodes. But yeah, that's all happening on the 12th. Moving right along, Spellgear officially launched this last week. It's been in early access for about 6 or so months. It used to be buy to play, they went free to play earlier, but even with their recent launch, it's not doing so well. It gets about 25 or so users online at once. It's a non-targeted action RPG with MOBA elements in a persistent world. Definitely a unique mix of concepts. I actually still haven't done a first look for this one yet, so expect that soon. But the player base is unfortunately still small. Next and last bit of news this week comes from Bethesda regarding Quake Champions. The game's closed beta officially began on the 6th of last week, and I'm not sure how long it's going to run, but I'm actually looking forward to trying it myself. I didn't get chosen for the beta just yet, unfortunately. Expect a video as soon as I can get in. Quake Champions aims to differentiate itself by its free-to-play model and the fact that it's going to be an arena shooter, meaning it'll be a bit more fast-paced, though it does have individual heroes and characters as well, with some abilities, though it should be faster-paced than things like Overwatch, but we'll see for ourselves as soon as we can play it. Anyway guys, that's it for MMO News this week. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the podcast. Later guys.